Hi, Melanie Muenchinger here, illustrator for Gina K Designs. Today I'm going to be sharing how to make a simple scene with my Stamper's Favorite set, also from Gina K Designs. Got a little smudge on this card after I made it, so I'm going to show you how quickly I can recreate this for you. The tools and products that you're going to need to create this card are the Stamper's Favorite set and some acrylic blocks for the different images. We're using the hummingbird, the leaf, and the flower. Going to need some ink pads, the Gina K Designs Black Onyx ink, and the Gina K Ocean Mist. You'll need a sponge dauber for sponging that sky. The Copic markers that I'm using today, I've got B06 and B37, YG93, G05, and YG67, and finally RV25 and RV19. You're also going to need some scissors for cutting out couple of the images. I'm going to show you the paper Tole technique along with the Copic technique and the sponging technique, and then just some cardstock. So you'll need some white, pink, and black. So I use the Gina K Pure Luxury White, Passionate Pink, and Black Onyx. Finally, you will need some adhesive pop dots. I am out of all of my adhesive foam squares and things right now, but so I always keep the scraps on hand just in case so that I can snip them up. And it's really nice because you can actually use a long strip if you have something long and skinny. So I'll just be cutting up what I need today for today's video. All right, so going to begin with creating the scene. This is 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. We're putting it on an A2 size card base. And I'm going to stamp out my hummingbirds first. So whenever you want to have more than one of the same image on a card, unless you're trying to create a pattern, let's say that you're using flowers or animals, you want to turn them so that they are not going to look like the same creature or plant. So I'm going to have one going down, and then I'm going to have one going up. And I'm going to color them a little bit differently. So it's going to look like they are two different birds rather than some static stamp. And I accidentally caught the edge, so just press that right down. It's really easy to see with the clear stamps if you miss part of it, just to go straight down back onto it to get the whole image. Okay, then I'm going to take my leaf and I'm just going to add a little bit of greenery around the edges. So again, I'm going to turn the stamp so it looks like they are hovering over a little rose bush. Okay. And then I'm going to do the flower last with that pink cardstock. So for coloring my birds, what I did was I referenced some hummingbird images on Google, and I'm sharing the link below, but I picked a ruby-throated and an emerald. So let's go ahead and do the ruby-throated one first. So we're going to make that ruby throat. So I have this hot pink that I'm just going to dab in. And you'll notice on this image, it's a little bit different, the shading, than I do on some of my other illustrations. Their little wings and their little feathers are kind of like teeny tiny little scales. That's why you see these little dots. They're also very iridescent, so almost like little scales. So I'm just going to go ahead and do some stippling rather than filling that whole thing in, and then also leave some white. All right, so they have kind of a greenish body underneath that ruby throat. So I'm just going to kind of pat in some of that green, put a little bit on the tail, and just not fill in the whole thing because I want them to look like they're reflective of the light. Dab it into that wing area and then just make some light flicking strokes out onto that wing. Okay. Then I'm going to take this Y67 and I'm just going to go in and just do some little dots just like I see on the image. And that's really going to make that pop. And then just a tiny bit under the bottom of the wing. Okay. Now I'm going to use a darker pink for the top of that ruby throat. Okay, so I always like to use normally at least 2 shades of each color just so you have a dark and a light. And forgot to add the little green on his beak. Okay, let's also go ahead and just quickly fill in these leaves. And you could pop up your leaves if you wanted, but I'm making it just like the card, except I'm going to pop up one of the birds. And I'm going to show you how with the paper Tole technique, you're going to layer on the front of the bird image, not the entire bird image, and it's going to make the wings look like one is in the distance. Okay? Let's go ahead and add a little more of the YG67 just to the middle of those leaves. And we can go back and blend that in a second with that lighter green. Okay, so now I'm going to take the lighter one and I'm just going right over that. So we're doing very simple coloring today because the birds are really what we're wanting to showcase. Okay, and if you want them to be a little bit more blended, you can go back and do tip-to-tip coloring by lifting that darker color off onto your leaves. All right, now let's go ahead and do this emerald one. So it has kind of a greenish tail as well, and again, I'm providing the link so that you can look at the exact real-life birds that I colored. Then we're going to go on and we're going to use some of this lighter blue, so it has kind of a blue and a green breast. It's just so beautiful. And I'm just dabbing that in. Okay, so see, I'm just doing little dots. Okay. Now I'm going to use the darker blue. So layer that. So you don't want to cover it completely, just a little bit. Now let's go in with this really bright emerald green. I'm going to add some to the tail. And then layer that over the wings. This is just what it looked like in that photo. Okay. That's all I'm doing for that. And then they actually have a really bright red beak, so I'm going to use this pink again. Okay. All right, so now it looks like two different birds. Now I'm going to go ahead and sponge on some of the Ocean Mist ink, and it's going to look like a cloudy sky. So again, this is adding dimension. They're not just static there on the white paper. And I don't even bother to cover up my images most times. I just carefully go around them and I leave some white space for the clouds. See, and just a little sponging just really gives us a nice, soft, atmospheric effect. Okay, finally, let's go ahead and add a flower. So here's one that I already stamped onto my Passionate pink paper, and I cut it out, and then you would just pop that up with some pop dots, or in this case, some of the trimmings from the leftover pop dots. So I'm just going to put that right there at the bottom. Okay. Now to add some dimension to this flower, this is saving us a lot of time coloring. If we want a solid looking flower, you can just stamp it right onto a dark pink cardstock. But to show you just how to add a little bit of dimension to those petals and to bring in that ruby throat, I'm using that same color Copic that I used, and I'm just dabbing it and doing little quick flicks over the darkest areas of that flower. See how I have those little black lines in the image to show where the petals are overlapping. Now, if you want to go a step further, this is a paper Tole effect that I was talking about. This is that same stamped flower image. You'll go in and you're just going to cut out those bottom layers of the petals so that you're left with about 5 or 6 there around the middle, and you can decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to cut off. And depending on how much time you want to take, you could actually layer this up 3, 4, 5 tiers if you want. And then that last one would just be that middle part. But because I'm going to put this card into an envelope, I'm just going to try to keep it to 2 layers. Okay. All right. And I also like how you can use these as different flowers. That would be really pretty too, to add another one to the image. So I'm going to just go ahead and fill that in just like I did the other one. So you don't actually need to do that on the bottom one if you're going to end up putting another one over it. Okay. Okay, so that's how we make a dimensional flower. It's kind of like paper piecing because you just line it up where it's going to go right over that first one. Okay, so now you have, and if you want, you can bend out those little petals to give it just a little more dimension. And finally, I want to show you what I like to do with this bird, and it's actually going to look like its little wings are flapping. I'm going to cut off this back wing. So we're just going to be focusing on the body that's in the front and the head and its little feet. And these are Cutter Bee scissors. So they're really nice. They have a really fine point and a skinny blade, and they're good for fussy cutting. I like to trim off large sections of my paper when I'm trying to go in tight little areas, and then you're not having to work so hard to go around that edge. It's just not as awkward. And then any little bits you missed, okay, carefully go into that beak. Okay, so when you layer that on top, you're going to see that the wing is in front and then the other wing is in the back. And what you can even do if you want, I'm actually going to cut off that little tail. And if you layer it up this way, you don't need to do all that coloring on the bottom layer. So let me go ahead and put some pieces on this bird. And I'm actually going to let the wing flap free. So I'm going to layer it right over that bird. And then I'm just going to gently, gently flip that out. Not pretty? It's so easy, fast. So you would just layer it right on there. You could use a scrap of that pink for adding that greeting. And I use Thinking of You from Teresa Momber's vertical greeting set, also from Gina K Designs, just because I really wanted to accentuate this tall layout. Even though it's still an A2 size card, you just have such a nice vertical going with those birds. So I love these greetings. I hope this was helpful to you, seeing how you can make one image look even more dimensional by just popping up part of it. I always like popping up images on my cards. It just really adds a lot. Thanks for watching my video. Please visit my blog for more inspiration, hands, head, and heart. Thank you for watching.